as Vanderpump Rules continues, the Toms just look worse and worse. It is honestly becoming so difficult to watch.
It really is, and it's also so fascinating to watch. It's just, you know, I think that this is the season that you see the most of the seams of kind of like what is being created for us through kind of Vanderpump Rules and through reality TV. And partially I kind of like wonder if that's because we've become so like media literate, and like we're always like thinking about this, and you know, understanding that storylines are being created, and so now when we see storylines being created in front of our eyes, we can actually catch on to it.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, it's such an interesting episode of the season to be getting to watch, because it's just
Well,
everything's all happening.
well, that's it, right? Like, I feel like now that we know everything that happened with the Scandoval, we can see Tom Sandoval basically like self-producing, and like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are speculating too that he's producing Raquel and the way that she's acting. And he's like, you could tell that he's setting up these storylines to later basically like put the crumbs. Oh my God, what am I saying? He's cutting up these storylines so that
He's placing the crumbs so that we can kind of
yeah, we see Tom Sandoval now like producing himself, and also, you know, arguably producing Raquel, and we see him planting the kind of seeds to later be able to break up with Ariana and be like, oh, our relationship was, you know, so bad. He's very clearly trying to write this narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if he hadn't done the Howie Mandel interview, if we would like be able to see it in kind of the same way, because I think a lot of the Howie Mandel interview, you know, introduced us to a lot of the topics that he was going to go after. And now, you know, like the them not being in a good place, you know, him not being sure about this whole like fertilization of her eggs, like just all of the kind of dynamics of their relationship that he like went over in that interview. We're now seeing him really hammer like home those points in the most recent episodes of Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah.
Especially with like, you know, him being like, oh, she thinks I'm unintelligent. She what was the other complaint? It was unintelligent
Like,
and annoying.
Annoying. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
she finds me annoying. And then even just for like the comparison of like one episode to the next, like the one where he's talking with Ariana on the couch at their house, and he's like bringing up these things like, I think you think that I'm annoying, I think you think that I'm not intelligent. And she's like, no, Tom, like I wouldn't date you if you weren't intelligent. And then she's also like, no, like I'm sure you'll find me annoying too. And then literally the next episode he's like talking to Tom Schwartz, and he's like, she thinks I'm unintelligent, she thinks that I'm annoying. And it's like, well, you just had to say that because she's already like told you that she doesn't think that, but now you need to make sure that we're like carrying the plot along with this like whole like she's the reason that our relationship isn't working.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I feel like because literally almost verbatim everything he said in that interview, we then saw him say in that conversation with Ariana. Also, I don't know how you felt about it, but it felt so random and like forced, that conversation on his part. Like Ariana felt like literally confused by what he was saying. Like I feel like they're having a total different conversation about like her freezing her eggs, and then he's just like, you know, like I think you it's like you find me annoying. And it feels like she's almost so like she almost doesn't even give it that much like space, because she's like, what are you saying? Like the way that she's talking to him, you could tell that she was like, what are you talking about? Like she didn't even get angry. She was super cool and collected, but like it did feel like she was probably like, where's this coming from? Like, what are you saying?
Like, where is this going? Like, what is this like kind of scene supposed to be in your mind? Yeah, no, that was so strange, especially because like, did he only go after those things because she told him like, well, maybe you should take less shots, and like, you know, you find other ways to like deal with like, you know, your stress and like coping mechanisms that are a little bit healthier. Yeah, it felt very weird to like kind of see that little glimpse into their relationship, and knowing what we know now too with like how Raquel and Tom Sandoval are already hooking up at this point. Regardless of how involved that hookup is, it's definitely something that's at least happened, and it's been confirmed that it's happened.
It's so weird. And then the conversation that he had with Schwartz too was so frustrating on Schwartz's end too. And he's like, yeah, It does feel like she's like doesn't. What did he say? He's like she doesn't
Just,
back you, or
just
like
yeah.
she's
It's
quick
like a, and it's a,
to.
she's quick to denounce you or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, and like and yeah, and like it's a slippery slope in a relationship.
it's like this is a man who literally has called his wife like stupid, told her to shut
Mhm.
up, poured
Mhm.
drinks on her face.
Yeah.
Like, you're really gonna make that comment about Ariana, who has
Yeah.
been such a ride or die girlfriend to Sandoval for so many years. The
Mhm.
one time that we see her stand up to him on camera, he basically goes and cries about it.
Yeah, exactly. Now that he has like finally the one piece of evidence that he has, they're like, look, this is the flashback that we can use whenever, I'm saying something mean about how Ariana is so awful. You guys can flash back to the time that she told me that she wasn't going to help me fight with the other girls. I
Oh
know that
God.
that whole conversation with Schwartz in general, just like the acting, the overacting of it all, the like,
What?
the dumpling latte thing, like what is
Yeah. When
happening?
when Schwartz is like, "Oh, I feel like I'm not attracted to her," and he's like, "You don't have to be attracted." And then when she's like,
Mhm.
he's like, "I feel like she being Raquel has a crush
Yeah,
on someone else," and
yeah.
Sandoval's like, "What?" Like, it was the worst acting I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
Well, and I wonder, and I think I heard about this on She Speaks Bravo's podcast. They were kind of like speculating that maybe that was, I think it was She Speaks Bravo's podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. About how that was actually like Schwartz's way of kind of like digging a little bit at Sandoval, and like the preview that we've seen for next week too, where he makes the comment about like, oh, Brock and Sandoval, you guys better watch out because Raquel has a type, and they're like, what type is that?
uh,
And he's like,
Taken or
taken men. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, so the shark is getting a little testy here. Like, really play in with the limits of this information that you have
it's
there, buddy.
it's true. Well, it's also speculated that Sandoval told Schwartz in Mexico,
Mhm.
so that would mean that that scene was totally fake,
Yeah.
if it's
Oh,
true.
yeah. I think the scene is totally
Yeah,
fake.
I mean, I do too, but like
Yeah,
they
but
both acted it terribly.
yeah, horribly. But I do think that like that whole idea that like Schwartz is kind of like digging at Sandoval a little bit, it feels a lot like the old days with Jax too, where Jax would have this information on these guys and he would just like,
Yeah.
drop tiny little truth bombs here and there, and then they'd have to try to like cover for it and make up other versions of stories and be
Oh
like,
my gosh.
I couldn't make a phone call in the hotel because the Wi-Fi wasn't working, so we could only talk on the phone and not on video, and like whatever, I think things like that, versions of the stories that came out when they were allegedly hooking up with other women.